Hello, this is Amira McHugh, and welcome to the Let's Talk About Money Micro Summit. Money is a challenging topic to discuss, but as it is still one of the leading causes of chronic stress and relationship breakdowns, it's definitely something that we want to spend time talking about and finding ways to improve our experience with money. Today, I have assembled a team of experts who are going to help us learn how we can overcome our issues with finances, and that will include self-sabotaging behaviour and overspending. So I've invited Jane Monica Jones, who is Australia's leading financial therapist, to join us. She is the host of Financial Therapy Podcast and the author of The Billionaire Buddha. Jane works with the psychological and behavioural issues that stop us from thriving financially. And she also supports people with a number of common issues with money, such as an inability to save or budget, retail therapy concerns, overspending, and under-earning. So, hi, Jane, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Amira. It's great to be here.
So, I'm really curious, what led you to become a financial therapist?
I get asked this one often, and it has to do with my own terrible relationship with money, basically. So, in my life, I have been up and down, like many people with money, made a lot of money, then lost a lot of money. And it became kind of a chronic issue that was just really excruciating, actually. It was like, why can't I hold on to this? Or why am I overspending? Or why am I spending too much, on shoes or whatever I was doing? And when I started retraining to become a therapist, I kind of thought this area really fascinated me about there's got to be something deeper with money. We often think that money is just the numbers, but it's actually not. It has to do with issues of survival, issues of self-esteem, issues of feeling empowered or not empowered. And we really project a lot onto money. And so I was fascinated. And through that process, I really started to unpack a lot of my own behavior. So, if I wasn't saving, okay, so what's happening there? What's happening inside of me beyond just the numbers? So, I've made it my work, as you said, I wrote a book about it, looking at the deeper financial and behavioral issues with money. So I find it fascinating and I love it.
Well, I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit more about that book later.
I
But
will.
could you tell us what is the difference between a financial therapist and just say like an ordinary therapist? Is there a big
Yeah.
difference?
Well, there's not really. What I suppose I'm looking for looking at with clients is their issues with money. But in a general sense, I'm looking at the psychology. So like a therapist, I'm similar in that way. What are the kind of parts of our relationship with money that cause us to suffer, make us feel stressed, make us feel unhappy with ourselves? But I'm looking, rather than say looking at your health or relationships, I'm looking at your relationship with money, which is really our tool for survival. But it also has issues of self-esteem as well and self-worth. And that's why I find it really fascinating. And I find it a really great kind of lens to see how we see ourselves in the world. It has it's a great tool of being able to see, do I have a lot of self-regard for myself, or do I believe myself to be intrinsically valuable regardless of how much is sitting in my bank account? So as I said, I look at us and money and us and survival. I'm not looking really, I do work with couples, and of course I'm looking at their different values around money as well. So yes, I'm looking at the psychological, but I'm looking at it in the lens of looking at us and money.
What's interesting you said about that self-worth and money. That is the sort of the number one topic that I'm a little obsessed with.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a bit more about that, because I know that so many people actually have their self-worth and how much money they have tied up together.
Yeah. So that idea of our net worth and our self-worth.
Mm.
So where it really kind of comes from, it comes from our socialization, and socialization in psychological terms, or social work terms, is our upbringing. When we were little, what was it like at home for us when we were there as kids? Depending on our socialization, depending on what our family dynamics were, how our parents were with money, how um, we basically absorb all of that. We absorb all those experiences, mostly unconsciously. So we get told, particularly in Western societies where things like status is very important, if we don't measure up to those external markers, whatever that is, then we are basically comparing ourselves to those external markers.
Mm.
And it becomes a challenge when, say, we take financial hits, when our businesses go bankrupt, when we go through divorce and we feel like we have to start all over again. We've so inextricably linked these ideas of these comparison ideas externally that, of course, they're going to start hitting our internal sense of
Mm.
self. And depending on what the socialization was when you were younger, was it important for your family to have a certain amount of status? Or was there experiences where you were looking up to your parents and they felt maybe ashamed about their own situations? And somewhere in there, you said to yourself, okay, I'm never going to be doing that. It's never going to happen to me what happened to my parents. So really, it's an external benchmark that we are marking ourselves against. And it's not actually true,
Mm.
beyond, our children, when our children look at us, they're not seeing how much money we have in a bank account. Anyone that really cares and loves us is not really caring about what we have in our bank account. It's only us and our kind of internal low self-esteem that may put out there that our net worth is an important thing. And it causes so many people to suffer, and we put this kind of expectation on ourselves. And I'm not surprised I have a very busy practice because we have all these crazy expectations of ourselves. Life is hard enough. We don't have to go and do a comparison as well. So yeah, that's why we do it. Unfortunately, that's part of our kind of conditioning that we do that.
Wow, yeah, I completely agree with you. As a spending planner, I always say people are letting themselves suffer unnecessarily because there is something that can be done about it. But would you be able to tell us about what you would say is the leading cause of us not thriving financially and not being able to achieve our goals?
Yeah, I think the number one would have to be self-doubt, our
Mm.
self-belief, Now that comes again from our socialization. Maybe we didn't have very supportive environment that said, yes, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. We have what's called kind of like the inner critic inside of us, and it's constantly operating. And purpose was when we were little, where it was our mother's voice going, no, don't touch that because it's hot, or no, get out of that tree, you're going to fall, and all that sort of stuff. And it had a purpose because it meant to kind of keep us safe. But what happened as we grow older, we then internalize that voice and then keep ourselves small like were when we were little. But in actual fact, we're older and we're adults, but we're living with a set of internal rules that are keeping us small and keeping us contained and keeping us unexpanded. And we have this inner critic keeping us set in that way. And that's the voice that every time we go and try and expand says, okay, I'm going to go for that raise, or I'm going to start that business, or I'm going to invest in that stock, or whatever we do as far as financially, or I'm going to start budgeting. We'll have this inner critic that says, no, don't go and change, stay where you are. Who do you think you are? You're too big for your boots. The business is going to fail. And that's
Mm.
self-belief. It's a conditioning, and that we all have it. It had its purpose, as I said, when we were little, it was keeping us safe, but it actually keeps us stuck and keeps us from expanding. And the thing that we have to do is start seeing, when I expand, what happens to me? Do I freeze? Does my internal critic turn up? Do I run away? And that piece, that whatever that kind of voice in your head is saying you, is that piece that is keeping you small, in your comfort zone and everything. And if you can really work with that, and you might need some help. I mean, you can go and see a financial therapist, or you can go and see any therapist. If you can start dealing with that critic in your head, then you can really start transforming your life. And that is that when I decide to make a decision, then I believe that it's true. And I'm not going to listen to the noise in my head. Yep, you're going to show up, because that's part of being a human, that piece that's going to try and keep me small, but I'm not going to listen to it anymore. I'm going to, believe that something else is possible for me. And it happens, I work kind of somatically, meaning the body, meaning that the nervous system. We often think that, if I just affirmate myself, I can change anything. Well, actually, I think that's a little bit simplistic. And I think neuropsychology now knows that we really need to make ourselves feel safe and capable. And that you can't think yourself in that one in any way. You need to feel I've got what it takes. And it usually feels like it's in from our belly. Now, the way that we do that is that we deal with a lot of the kind of, what were those experiences when I was little that really kept me shut down? And when I go and expand, what happens? Oh, well, my heart starts racing, right? Okay, so what happens to you when your heart starts racing? Well, that's the signal for me to leave town, or that's my signal for me to go, no, this is a silly idea. Right. So seeing the physical cues of what happens to us, because normally what happens, we feel that heart race and then the head goes, danger, 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 let's get out of here. In actual fact, this could be a place for you to expand, actually. Is it that every time I feel my heart race that I run away? Is that what I'm doing? So this is that kind of, it's working kind of physiologically and then psychologically, and you get to know yourself better, basically. You understand, this is what happens to me when I want to expand. This is what happens to me when I grow. And become curious rather than judgmental, That's the lovely kind of, that's what I'm constantly saying to people. Be curious about what happens to you when you want to grow, when you want to expand. Right. Okay, great. That's a great place for us to start unpacking. Why was that one set up that way? Why are we conditioned in that way? What happened to you that kept you small? Yeah.
So curiosity instead of fear.
Curiosity instead of, fear is always going to be there. This idea that we can get rid of fear, no. Let's just put that one aside. Fear will also always show up because it is a survival mechanism. It's part of our very old brain, amygdala part, it's our sort of old part of our brain. Fear is an important quality. It's what happens to us when I feel fear. That is the key.
So the next sort of step from that, so fear, you feel the fear, but then what happens beyond that?
Exactly. People go, I never want to feel fear. Well, you want to be able to feel fear when you're walking down that street. You shouldn't be walking down and, there's someone there. You don't want fear to go. It's a very essential part of our survival. But it's what happens when I feel fear. Do I run away? It's fight, flight, and freeze. We are basically pretty simple animals, Fight, flight, or freeze. Do I freeze every time I feel fear? Do I run when I feel fear? Do I whatever? So it's about saying, not about fear. It's not saying, I don't want fear in my life. It's like, what happens when I feel fear? And that's where I'm saying, get curious rather than judgmental.
Because I guess if you don't ever want to feel fear, then from what you're telling us, that when you want to try to grow and expand, and then you've got that critic and, all that self-doubt, then that's limiting your ability to grow and to thrive financially or to achieve those goals that you want.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, fear is that thing that, fear gets a bad rap. As I said, we think that, oh, I never really want to experience. But actually, the fabric, when we really kind of focus on what's happening in our body when we feel fear, sometimes we can feel excitement.
Mm,
This is the same kind of thing. Right. It's about just normalizing in a way that the body is going to do its thing and how I can be it. And that's kind of a little bit about what we, with this whole sort of mindfulness movement. What we're trying to do in our mindfulness is go, okay, we often feel something, then we've got all these signals going to our head saying, oh, you're a terrible person or whatever like that. It's like, just creating a little bit of space. And then once we can be with that little bit of space, then we're ready. We're ready for opportunity. We're ready for us to do the work that we need to do. We're ready. This, again,
mm,
physiologically, it's called the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. And the best way for us to be in relating with money is when we're in rest and digest. We're ready. We're ready to take that, see that opportunity turns up, or we're ready to kind of expand and ask for a raise. But if we're activated and we're stressed and we're living under this kind of noise, we're not really fully ourselves, being able to take full responsibility and capability for our future, And unfortunately, just the nature of being a human, we are kind of conditions. We've had so many experiences that make us, freak out, feel small, all that sort of stuff. And it's about just going, okay, how can I resource myself so that I can feel centered and then start operating from a place of, confidence, embodied confidence, not in here,
mm.
but in here, the whole part of who you are.
So something that you really feel like inside.
Yeah, exactly. And that, we can't think ourselves confident, it comes from the belly, it comes from the gut, it comes from the heart,
Mm.
Yeah.
So I think like what you're saying is then that some feelings actually some sort of emotions feel the same in the actual body. So I know that fear and excitement, like that heart speeds up and you can get a little bit sweaty in the hands. So they sort of feel the same. So if we take a moment to actually stop and think, what am I actually
What's
feeling?
happening here? Yeah, that's right.
So that would
Exactly.
help people moving forwards and
Yeah,
in working towards goals and things.
that's right. So what happens often, say we were looking at retail, what I do with retail therapy, right? So we've had a terrible day and we feel really blue. And what we do is instead of say running over what I'm feeling, we go and get a little bit of a dopamine hit on a new pair of shoes. And there's for me, I look at retail therapy as a pathology, meaning that, it's kind of a bit of a disease of sorts, that we're kind of having to constantly go for this dopamine hit because something inside of us is not feeling so great.
Mm,
If we can deal with what's that not so great first, then the need to go again externally is not such a big deal, right? Now, there's a whole lot of research around financial therapy, particularly actually, or what's happening in the brain and the neurology and the chemicals that's happening. And it's a couple of things. So firstly, the hunt. The brain loves curiosity, right? It
mhm.
loves going and searching the internet. Oh, I want a pair of red shoes, but they have to be that sort of thing. So the brain just loves it. Goes and starts searching the internet or goes past and lots of shops and starts hunting, right? And it gives us this kind of, it gives us a hit of a dopamine, and dopamine's really good for kind of focus and problem solving and everything, and it gives us focus, right? So this hunt, and so we get addicted to that because we love the hunt, we love going out and searching because we're getting a bit of a happy high, right? Then we purchase the product and we get another dopamine hit. So unfortunately, we're kind of wired for this terrible behavior in a way,
Mm,
because we're often, and going and buying something, a pair of shoes, can often be a little bit easier than say going for a walk or going and, doing something a bit more nourishing for ourselves. It's a quick little thing. And we also get the habit of it gets built very quickly too in our brain. The brain loves it. It goes into, oh, I'm going into novelty. I'm going into the search. Then I get the reward. And then the cycle wants to start again. And that's why we're kind of constantly feel like we're out of control in a way, because we've got these brain sick chemicals that are making us go, yeah, I need that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the way we can stop that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because this is like, this is kind of a little bit scary in a way, because
It
I
is.
think that we do this and we definitely know that we feel better for that little bit of time.
Yeah.
But then when we're sabotaging ourselves and then, our finances are spiraling out of control, then obviously the guilt or the shame or something is going to kick in, right?
So we're on a roller coaster.
Mm,
We feel terrible about it. So we buy something to make ourselves feel a little bit better. And then because we've put ourselves into debt. Yeah. And really the same principle in a way is with retail therapy is what's happening when people have issues with gambling. It's the same thing. And drug addiction. It is of the same thing that's happening in the brain. And no wonder we feel terrible about it.
wow.
Yeah, it is. And and particularly when we start getting in debt, we even feel even worse.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
So
then that's going to lead to more shopping, right? Because
exactly,
we're
because we feel
trying to.
terrible and we need that hit
Mm.
again. So it's a cyclical thing. So one thing that we can do around retail therapy, or one thing that we can do around the dopamine hit that we're often looking for, is finding it in other ways, right? So exercise is a really great way to have dopamine. Getting sun, standing in the sun in the morning, having sunshine on our skin is really great for dopamine. Doing things that are really nourishing for ourselves, like, if you really have getting a massage or something,
Mm-hmm.
something that's really nourishing beyond going out for dinner or something like that, but something that's really soulful and loving. Curiosity, getting curious, because the brain loves curiosity. We often think that being curious about things can be a bit frivolous, but actually it's a
Mm.
really great thing for the brain. The brain loves it. If you've always been interested in, I don't know, understanding more about flowers, get curious of it, play with it for a little bit. Play is a lovely, great thing for our dopamine, play a ball, play games, anything like that. So moving the dopamine hit from being retail therapy to something else will mean that every time you feel a little bit down, you're kind of breaking that circuit, or you're breaking that link between that. And that's something, gambling, when I work with people that also have issues with gambling, I'm trying to build in more nourishing places that we go to when we don't feel great,
Mm.
rather than retail therapy, rather than gambling and things
So
like
once again, sort of like that curiosity. So you would be better served by perhaps learning about something that you were interested in, or
that.
maybe the
Yeah.
old board game.
Exactly. Play is fabulous for dopamine hits, and curiosity. The brain loves to be curious. It loves to investigate things. And we often think, oh, well, I've kind of, went to uni, or I went to school, or, I'm too old to learn. No, you can keep learning till the day you
Yeah,
oil. And that's
absolutely.
great for the brain. It starts
Mm,
really brain in a way that it can get more pleasure out of different things than just, say, the happy high on the new pair of shoes.
mm. So would this also be what causes overspending issues? Because often people know that they're overspending and they know that they shouldn't be doing it, that it's not serving them. Sometimes they're able to stop, but it's very brief.
Yeah.
And then off it goes again. It doesn't
Yeah.
really have a lasting impact. Is that sort of the same thing that's happening? Like,
Look, a
why
good.
aren't we able to stop
Well, it's again because
that
we've got
thing?
that neurobiology, that's all those
Mm,
neurochemicals that are making us try and go for the, bit of happiness. But
mm,
what could also be happening, which I often see a little bit, say, in overspending, is a little thing, issues around self-esteem. Okay. So let's say rather than say, the happy high is that I've had a terrible day. The boss was really mean to me. I had too much work. That's the happy high that we often go to. But self-esteem is a little bit different, and it's a bit deeper, as in that we don't really have a great, we're not really in love with ourselves, or we don't think we're the greatest person in the world. And that's what our measure of self-esteem is. The more that we love and respect ourselves is a measure of, high self-esteem. So if we have low self-esteem, we're more likely to do things like overspending and also under earning in that way. This is another
I
piece
was
that
going to ask you about under earning in a
yeah,
minute.
meaning that we often will do kind of sabotage behaviors like overspending, under earning, not sticking to a budget, all that sort of stuff, usually has issues with sabotage and self-esteem. So the less that we like ourselves, the more likely we're going to sabotage the things that we do. So let's say I want to, budget. I say, okay, new year, that's it. I'm going to budget this year, and I'm going to stick to what I stick to. I'm going to stick to my budget this year. This is who I am now. And then because we, again, have self-doubt, we might not, really believe that we're the kind of person that could get ahead financially, that my family never got ahead, or everybody else knows more than I do, or whatever. All that sort of self-talk is saying that is an indication that we have pretty low self-esteem. And in order that when we grow, if we want to get up here, but we're actually set for a kind of a personal level here, then we'll sabotage ourselves to come back down here. Yeah. Because that's where we believe we should be. We don't actually, we like the idea of being that budgeter, and we do it for one or two times, or we decide that week I'm not going to overspend. But because we've sort of set ourselves as being a overspender, bad budgeter, we're always going to go back down to that. We've kind of conditioned ourselves, or our conditioning from, a whole lot of history around us and survival is set that way. So it takes a lot to break that. It takes a lot of help, again, maybe not a financial therapist, maybe just a general therapist as well. Again, look at, in my book, I talk about the financial saboteur, what happens to us when we want to expand and grow, and what are those things that are sabotaging our financial expansion. Yes, but essentially it's self-esteem. It says it's part of us that's saying, I'm just not worth it, or I'm not, I would love to be here, but actually I believe myself to be here. And of course, that's mechanisms just going to pull it and keep that sabotaging behavior set in that way.
So you would almost have to lift this sort of what you believe is sort of that set point. You would have to lift that up so that you could.
No, it's
No?
not that. I'm not, no, we can't really change our beliefs until we've
Okay.
kind of gone back in and dealt with why those beliefs were built there in the first place. I'm not a lot, being in the field of kind of financial therapy, people are saying, are you into abundance and minds? I mean, like affirmation and stuff. And I'm not, because if anything, all that sort of affirmation, abundance sort of talk is a little bit like not actually dealing with what's here, not fully dealing with self-acceptance. Actually, there's a part of me that is a little bit terrible with money. And for me, when we can come to that place, that's real self-compassion and self-acceptance. And from there we go, so why is that? How can I be curious about that? What's happened to me in my life? In what belief systems have I adopted to keep me in that way? When we go into affirmation and all that sort of stuff, it just sounds like a whole lot of hard work to me. And it sounds like a whole lot of lack of self-acceptance, Deal with yourself first, then you can grow. Then you're better able to not, if you do a whole lot of affirmations and then you're still not getting the results, what are you going to do? You're going to hate yourself even more, Whereas if you start dealing with your history, your belief structures, right? Why were they all built that way? What happened to me that, broke me a little bit?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I see that I was broken. Now I've got more to love. Then you've got more of you to be in the world, more self-acceptance of where you're at. And then that makes you more fuller to take on whatever in life.
So definitely more acceptance and then looking for those next steps instead of this idea that you're broken in some way.
Well, we are all broken. I'm a big believer in that, but it's
Yeah.
about how do we accept our broken bits. You know, there's
Okay.
that lovely art thing in Japanese, you know, where they break the bowls and then they put them together back in, repair them with gold. You know,
Ah,
it's a
haven't
beautiful
heard of
thing.
this before, but
Yeah,
sounds
it's a
interesting.
Japanese kind of form of art. They break, say, porcelain bowls and then they put them back, but then they mold them together with gold. And I just think that that idea is that we are kind of all broken, really, you know, and the more that we can accept that and fall in love with those broken bits, then we're better able to be kinder and more accepting of where we're at, you
Yeah.
know. That all that piece about, you know, yeah, if you'll get there, but get there in a nice way rather than in a kind of self-hating way, you know.
That sounds much more pleasant.
Yeah, exactly, that's right.
So you said before as well that you work with people around the area of under earning.
Yeah,
So I think my assumption of that is that people have the potential to earn more,
yeah.
but they're not. Is that right?
Well, it's that. Yeah, absolutely. So the people, you know, have, yeah, absolute potential to earn more, but also too that they're under earning in a way that, say, they're not able to pay their bills, you know, that they, not that they're overspending in their lifestyle, but the fact that they're not even living in a way that means that they can have the choices that they want, that they can have play, that they can, you know, maybe build for a holiday, or even then they're not meeting their bills, meaning that they're just not earning enough to be able to live day to day. Now, I work with at-risk homeless men for Mission Australia.
Okay,
And
yeah.
that's some of the kind of things that we look at when we're under earning. And there's a lot, you know, a lot of people live in poverty. A lot of people are under earning. And again, it has issues with self-esteem. But that we're, yeah, that basically maybe that my father didn't earn very much, so I'm not going to earn very much. You know, there's a sort of like a very entrenched belief system, well, this is our lot. Yeah.
Mm,
And again, I say it's conditioning. You know, we're conditioned. We're kind of, we absorb all the kind of messaging and modeling that we got when we were kids. And then we kind of sets us who we think we are, right? And it's not until we can kind of work through and understand, actually, I've been conditioned that I'm only ever going to earn $30,000 a year because that's something that's in my head. And so then every day, that's all I do, and that's all that I toil. And there is a lot of yeah, I mean, you know, I think part of that kind of, you know, that wealth creation kind of idea is a kind of a way of um trying to break that sort of blueprint that a lot of people have. But again, it has a lot to do with self-esteem, saying that we're these kind of people.
mm,
We can't get any higher. And it's one of the most painful things, because I often see working with people that are really under earning is that they have this higher ideal for themselves, yet their conditioning is the thing that's saying, well, but no, I can't have that, you
mm.
know. And it's just excruciating to see that yeah, that people often, you know, there's a part of our spirit that actually really wants to long and you know, expand and really have, you know, quite a big life. And then there's this other part that is the conditioned sales board, but that can't be me.
Mm,
So, you know, if you find yourself that even even after paying your bills, and if you're not doing a lot of retail therapy and you're still not really thriving, then maybe you're under earning.
yeah,
Maybe there might be something in you that's not asking for that raise, or not going for that job, or going back to study to maybe get a better career, or all that sort of says that I'm too old. That could be kind of part of your problems or issues with under earning, is that there might be a part in here and here that says I'm not actually worth anymore. And if we're not earning enough to be able to kind of keep a roof over our head, because that's really, feed ourselves, clothe
Yeah.
ourselves, and keep a roof over our head. And if that's an issue, then that's part of why I work as a volunteer teaching at home, is because we didn't get taught a lot of this stuff.
No.
And we, certainly our upbringings, a lot of people's upbringings were very challenging. So, it's part of my kind of pro bono work, is working with
Yeah.
people that didn't get that opportunity.
So there's a lot of people who say they're hard workers, like they work really hard, but they don't ever have anything. So is this sort of like the under earning? But you said that it's something that you can identify with. So maybe, my mum and dad were really, really hard workers, but we still didn't have enough, and you know we kind of were always scraping through. And then my grandfather was always also this
Yeah.
way. So this
Yeah,
be sort of the cycle that
that's
we're
right.
falling into.
Exactly. So we know from, again, from sort of DNA and things like that, is that experiences of trauma is intergenerational, meaning that there's
Mm.
traces when we have a traumatic event. There are, like, parents went to war or something like the Depression. People were starving in, say, the Depression, or loss of job. There's genetic material that actually gets, material and chemicals that actually get passed on down through the DNA, which means that we still hold a lot of intergenerational trauma. So if somewhere in our history we had our parents suffering in the Depression, that genetic material is still within us today. So
Mm.
what's happening is that, certain decisions, certain ways of operating, belief structures, and all that sort of stuff gets passed down generation to generation to generation. And it's very difficult to, one, actually have an idea that it's um, happening, because if you're that's the pool that you swim in, it's often hard to see what
Yeah.
pool you're actually swimming in. um, but this sort of genetic material is, it's part of your DNA. Well, my grandparents were really poor in the Depression, and then they would have taught values and ways of being to their children, and my parents or whatever would have taught that to me. We know intergenerational transference of chemicals, systems, beliefs, and things like that. So again, condition, we're pretty loaded up, and this is why I'm kind of so fascinated about financial therapy, because we believe that, or what I see is that there's so many people that are tortured around money, because
Mm.
one, we were never taught it, and two, we've got so much conditioning around it, things like intergenerational stuff. Yet we often think money is just the numbers, but in actual fact, money is all this other stuff. It's like, can I survive? Who am I? Self-worth, self-esteem, self-belief, self-everything. And I think because it's so overwhelming, all that picture, all that issues of survival, I think that's why we disassociate and say, oh, it's just the numbers. But the
Mm.
more that I work in this area, I'm like, no, this is the big wound. This is the biggest. This is
Yeah.
survival. It's even before love, before the love of another, it's survival. It's numero uno, biggest wounding. And I think it's been good because, there's not so many I think I'm the only financial therapist here in Australia, but certainly in the States, we are starting to see that there is a psychology and wounding and brokenness around us and money. And why wouldn't there be? It's about survival.
Well, that's it, and that's one of the things I believe, that it's Maslow's hierarchy of need, and the very first thing is security and
Yeah.
safety. So if we don't eat, then there's no going anywhere else.
That's right. You can't forget about even falling in love.
Yeah, forget that bit. Who needs that when you
Yeah,
don't know if you
yeah.
got the roof over your head?
Exactly, that's right. And I'm really welcome the idea that we're starting to look at it, money, as in a very deeper way, rather than just the accumulation. But who are we? And particularly in the context of the environment, when we're dealing with our self-esteem issues and with consumerism, the planet can't take it. We need to start,
Yeah.
when we're sort of over shopping and over consuming because we've got mental health issues, it's not serving the planet, and it's certainly not serving us. So, to be able to kind of look at it and give a voice to it. And, I came from a generation of, we don't talk about money. Thankfully, that's starting to change. We're starting to teach kids here in Australia about money and how to have difficult money conversations. But
Mm.
it's a big subject of which we don't talk enough about, because it's so loaded and it's so locked with shame and comparison and judgment and a whole lot of things.
Well, there is a lot to it, that's for sure. But I suppose that by not talking about it and not dealing with it, when you're weighed down by this chronic stress
Mm,
day in and day out, then it does limit your ability to achieve your goals and to move forwards and to grow.
yeah, absolutely. That's
So
right.
you have a book that you wrote, Billionaire Buddha, which I want you to maybe tell us a little bit about. But there's what would you suggest would help people get started on this path? Because it's clearly not something that we can just, I don't know, get some more money and, you
Yeah,
know, like you said, it's not really a numbers thing. So
yeah,
what could we do to start moving forwards and sort of healing
yeah,
from this chronic stress
yeah.
and pain?
So I suppose it's the kind of thing that inspires people to come to see me. Is
Hmm.
really what is the best place to start. And why people come and see me is because they have some pain around money.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, we often think that if I had more money, then that's going to heal it. But in actual fact, it goes in a sliding scale. If you if you've got issues with overspending, the more money you have, you're just going to keep overspending.
I see that often.
Yeah. So it's about what is causing you pain, right? So if I can't save and you really want to save, then that's where you start. And you don't start at okay, so again, be curious, not judge. See if you can be curious and not judgmental. Get curious about yourself. What happens to me when I say put some money into that account, and then 3, 4, 5 days later, then I draw it out again?
Hmm.
What is it? Am I not budgeting? Am I not really being realistic about what my expenses are? Am I having a bit of a retail therapy dopamine hit? Is it a self-esteem issue? It's that curious, get curious, and start with where it's what's causing you the pain. So that's saving. If you wanted to budget, or if you're having fights with your partners. I mean, I have a big part of my business is couples that have different family values and different conditioning, and then they come together and clashes. What is the pain that is the clash there? Is it because one's a saver and one's a spender, or one has one is unable to have joy? Even that's a funny thing, pleasure and money. You'd think that would be really easy, but there's a lot of people that cannot find pleasure with money, because there's too many rules and too many. I know I have to save. I can't, I'll save when I'm dead, I'll spend the money when I'm dead, that sort of idea. So wherever money is causing you pain, that is the place that you start. Get courageous around that. See if you can really, go curious. What is it? Is it that I'm spending that money that I want to save? Or is it that I don't believe I can have more? Or is it that I'm afraid of asking for a raise? Or am I afraid of getting a home loan? Or get curious. That
Mm.
wherever that causes you pain is the place that you can grow from. I'm a big kind of pro understanding pain, because pain is a really great motivator for change. We often, if we haven't got much pain in our life, we and I'm talking scales of pain, but if it's a really great motivator for to say, okay, that's it, I want to change you. If life is kind of a bit soft and frou-frou, then we don't have motivation to change.
There's nothing to be, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
interesting that you said um, people wanting, like having that fear about getting a home loan. So you want a house, that is a goal, but then
yeah,
something is blocking you. And I have seen that happen before. So you've prepared financially, but then there's like, no, no, I can't do that. So
Yeah.
put
So
the brakes on.
fear is a big piece, and we talked about that a little bit early. It's about in that unpacking, like, of, your pain point. I want to buy it. So what happens to me in fear? Again, back to that place. Do I
Mm,
freeze around fear? Do I run away around fear? What happens when I'm afraid? That's a really great place to start. Am I afraid that I will have my lifestyle will change if I have a mortgage? Is that, am I afraid that, get a piece of paper. What am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that I won't be capable to make the deadline payments, or I feel
mm,
like it means that I won't be able to travel. Yeah, write it all down, get it all out. Really get conscious on working out what are these fear points in you. If it's just fear and you're not thinking it out, then you're frozen. But if you can kind of get creative and go, okay, what am I afraid of? All
yeah,
right, well, maybe you haven't done enough travel yet. Maybe you're right. Okay, go and travel first, then do that. Or you
yeah.
want to go back and study, that's more important. Okay, do that first. Maybe buying a house is not right for you right now.
So the same, I guess, with under earning. Say you're the type of person who's just sort of making enough to pay the bills and there's not really much to save or anything like that. Um, and there may be some sort of fear around getting a new job. I do hear this a lot when people would say, I do need a new job, but I'm kind of afraid that if I get it, then it'll all go pear-shaped. So I'm probably better just staying here.
Yeah.
So would they then also look around that fear, like,
Yeah. What happens to me when I feel fear? Oh, well, I freeze. I feel
mm,
incapable, that I'm not going to be able to do it. Get curious, journal that one out. Fear is always going to show up. It's what happens when fear is there. What happens to us when I'm afraid? Well, I freak out, or I go into self-doubt, or I go into self-criticism, or I want to run away. Right, great. Why do I want to run away? Well, because as you're writing, you might, because I remember that time when, I was a little kid and something happened.
yeah,
It's about, yeah, or that if we've never had any money in my family and everybody's going to judge me if I start making more money. That's a big
ah, yes, that one.
one. Where all my parents are going to say, or the people, yeah, that one, that we're going to be judged. Right. Look at that. Look how I worry about what other people think of me. Curious, 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 curious.
The old tall poppy syndrome,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
being cut out there.
Yeah, yeah,
So tell us about your book, because I mean that might be something else that sort of helps people
yeah.
get a bit of a start on going down that path as well.
Yeah. So the way I've broken the book up into two parts. So there's theory at the beginning, and I'm talking about money and money and pain, money and power, the financial saboteur. I'm sure, I imagine a lot of your watchers are going to totally understand the financial saboteur. So I really unpack what's happening inside of us. And then I also do a lot of inquiry, so that, you'll be some journaling, understanding that, get curious. What am I with my own financial saboteur, or what am I with fear, or whatever. So it's a really great workbook in that way. And then the second part of the book is the 28-day challenge. And through there, it is a combination of doing sort of inquiry, as well as, how am I with money, as well as practical, like, really looking at your budget in a really frank and open way. Again, I work with people and doing budgeting, and people kind of go into like, oh yeah, and then and I'm going to save money here, or I'm going to start saving here. And it's like, well, what about that, those cigarettes that you smoke, or the alcohol that you buy? Oh, no, I'm not putting it in the budget. Well, I mean, maybe the cigarettes, but yeah, you've got to put that in there, because that's what you do. Or, well, I'm going to cut out coffees. Well, no, do you do that yeah, I do. Okay, well, put the coffees in there. We start, when we go into budgets, we often think that we're going to be our ideal self. Well, no, just be your real self.
Exactly.
As well as looking at things like there's one chapter, one day in particular, I talk about this idea of who are we trying to punish with our money, which is a really interesting thing that we often don't want to talk about, but how we weaponize our money against other people. And sometimes,
Mm,
I know that, say, where people have been left out of their will from their parents or things like that, or
mm.
that we punish our ex-partner and withhold childcare payments or all that sort of stuff. So it's, I'm really kind of covering subjects that I think we need to start hopefully opening up, that we can maybe heal a bit of the community as well, not just ourselves, but heal some of the community wounding that we have around money as well. So yeah, it's lots of practical, lots of inquiry, lots of getting curious rather than judgmental. And by the end of it, really, every person that I have heard from that's read the book has just said that's not just transformed their financial lives, but certainly their sense of self and self-acceptance and self-compassion. So I totally encourage anyone to buy the book. But in fact, can I do?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, well, I can't wait to get started, but it only arrived just before we started talking, so I didn't have much of a chance. But I'm now fascinated by that chapter you just spoke about with the, who are we punishing? I hadn't given that much thought. But you do have something to offer people who
I
do purchase
do.
your book, right?
So yeah, so somewhere in the link somewhere that
Yes, we're
Amira is
going to
going
put
to
that in the link for
put
people. Yeah.
up. So what I am doing is quite an exceptional offer that anybody that buys my book, The Billionaire Buddha, direct from me, again, there's going to be a link. They're going into a draw to have 3 financial therapy sessions with me. That is my standard practice of when I ever book a client, I always do like a 3-pack, which means you're going to have 3 hours at, 3 sessions,
So 3
an hour each,
individual hour sessions. Yeah.
um, of financial therapy, and I'll be working one-on-one. And now I've got 4 of those. Now, the only way that you can
Wow.
get this offer is if you buy the book, and then you will go into the draw, and I'm going to be working with 4 individuals, and you're going to be working with me, and you're going to bring all your beautiful history and broken bits and inspiring bits. And yeah, it's transformational. I have had actually a client said to me last night that was finishing up after working with him for a while, he said, I feel like I am a different person, an absolute different person. And this is the work that I do. It's pretty transformational and beautiful and loving and fun as
Well,
well.
we're lucky to have you. I mean, doesn't sound there's not a lot of financial therapists, definitely not here.
No, I'm the only one in Australia. Yes.
Wow, well, we definitely need to use your services then. But I
Yeah.
think what an amazing offer. I think firstly the book is going to be a fascinating read, but then to sort of also back that up with a few sessions would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So 4 lucky people will get 3 sessions each
Yes.
with me.
So don't forget to go and, look for that link below and get that book.
Nice one. Thanks, Amira.
Well, what can I say? That is, wow, I feel like I've been on a bit of a roller coaster myself. But hopefully, with our viewers, that they have got some really um, important information that they can then take and start applying for themselves. And
Yeah.
also, I think also knowing that there is help there and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, well, I find that people are quite worried about being criticized. We don't like to be criticized, and we certainly don't like to be judged. I mean, we're great at doing it to ourselves, but we certainly don't want other people to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming if people were going to come and talk to you, that you'll be very, you know, caring and
Yeah.
not
Look, absolutely.
judgmental and
Yes, yes, yes. So, as a therapist, that's, part of my care. The other thing is that, when we started this idea of, any therapist, that's, we call it unconditional positive regard, which means that we, have an understanding that we're all challenged and why I'm very passionate about the subject of being a financial therapist is because it is so loaded, and it is very tender for a lot of people, if not all of us, really.
Mm,
Um, survival and feeling like we're unable to survive, even thrive, can be very, very, very soul destroying. I mean, you can hear that there's terrible incidences of, of people doing terrible things when they get into large amount of debts to themselves,
yeah, I
and
know.
this is why I think this work is so important, because we need to see actually, uh, when we lose everything in a bushfire, when we lose everything in a divorce, or, or we feel unable to kind of grow and expand in our life, we just need more. We need help with that, and it's very important, and I'm thankful that we're starting to see that actually this is an area in a field, just like relationships, just like health, that does need a bit of help, because we didn't get much guidance when we were younger.
No,
And there's a lot of messaging out there that tells us that we may not be great, and it's certainly um, yeah why I do my work is to say, actually, well, beyond your bank account, you're just absolutely beautiful. So
exactly. And I
yeah,
think that's the key thing to take away is that beyond all of that, you are still an amazing person, and
yeah,
you do have talent, and you have gifts, and you do have the capacity to learn and to grow,
yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you so much for being with us. That was like just so much wonderful information,
Great,
and I hope that people do get a lot out of that. So
great. Thanks.
tomorrow's guest is actually going to be helping us understand what might be blocking us from achieving what you want. So he's going to be talking to us about resistance. So I think you touched on that a little. He's going to go a bit more into the resistance side of it. So we hope to see you back again tomorrow so that you can hear from him and enjoy. Thank you.
Nice one.